Hello everybody. Hopefully all of you are keeping fine. Today we are going to discuss about clause. Clause. This is an important item, an important grammatical item. We must have a clear idea about what kind of clause it is, how many kind of clauses are there, what a clause is, how it functions in a sentence. Otherwise, our sentence construction will never be correct. At least we will not have a clear idea about the sentence what we are writing. So let us go to clause first. Now, if you watch carefully, you will see that there is a systematic growth in the organization of the language, of English language. Step by step, first comes the English alphabet. Mind it, the English alphabet from A to Z, there are 26 letters in the English alphabet. Sometimes students make mistakes that they get confused between alphabet and letter. Sometimes say the B is an alphabet, C is an alphabet, A is an alphabet. No, it is not correct. Actually from A to Z, the 26 letters make the alphabet. What in Bengali we may say as Bornomala. So there are 26 letters in the English alphabet, and these letters can be broadly divided into three categories. For the convenience of our progress, let us divide it into three categories. First one is regular vowels, and then regular consonants, and the semis. The semis, I won't call them the semi vowels or semi consonants, I will just merely call them the semis, because semi means half, you know. Sometimes they are consonants, sometimes they are vowels. A, E, I, O, U, these 5 letters are regular vowels. But although they are only 5, they make various sounds. It is said that they make 22 sounds. Together, these 22 kind of sounds together are called diphthong. We need not go into the minute details of all these things, but just keep in mind that A, E, I, O, U, these 5 letters, they make 22 sounds. Some of them are consonant sounds, some of them are vowel sounds. And that is how it determines the use of an article before a word, whether the word, though it may start with a regular vowel, sometimes it creates a consonant sound. That's why we have to use A before, the independent article A before it, not an. We will give examples later. So A, E, I, O, U are the 5 regular vowels. Then B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, K, L, M, like this. There are 19 regular consonants. There is no confusion about them. And there are 2 semis, W and Y. They are called semis. Why? They are called semis means sometimes they function like a vowel, sometimes like a consonant. When they are used as vowel, we call them semi-vowels. When they are used as consonants, you can call them consonants, semi-consonants, whatever you will call it. We know that without any vowel there cannot be a word, but there are certain words. This vowel does not necessarily mean that the regular vowels. It may be either the regular vowels or the semi-vowels. Okay. Say words like sky, try, my, there is no A, E, I, O, U. Still these are words because W and Y, either of them will be there. So if we have to define a word, how can you define it? Keep it in mind, whenever you are defining something, you have to always exhaustively say about the 2 aspects of a thing, its structure and its function. Exhaustively means there should not be any exception beyond that. So we can say that a word is a meaningful unit of a sentence made of regular vowels or regular semi-vowels with or without the help of consonant. Repeat. A word is defined as a unit of a sentence, a meaningful unit of a sentence, you can say, made of regular vowels or semi-vowels with or without the help of consonant. Say I am a boy or I am a girl. How many words are there? I am a boy. 4 words are there. You see, I itself is a word. It makes with a vowel only. Am, am, one vowel is there. A. I am a is another word, and it is made of only one vowel. And girl, girl, I, one vowel is there. Okay. So these are the basic ideas that whenever we say a word, this word structurally and functionally should have its own significance. It should be made of regular vowels or semi-vowels with or without the help of consonants, and functionally it should become a meaningful unit of a sentence. Next we come, afterward we come to syllable. The next step is syllable. What is it? Syllable is a division of a word made for the convenience of spelling or pronunciation, each division containing a vowel at the least. At the least means there can be sometimes more than one, but there must be one at the least. So syllable is the division of a word, that means for the convenience of spelling and pronunciation. Convenience of spelling and pronunciation, we divide a word into one or more divisions, each division containing a vowel, that is what is called syllable. Okay, so take the example evening. E-V-E-N-I-N-G, evening, accent descent. Okay, the sound pitches up, eve and then ning. Okay, there are two vowels, there are two syllables. Okay, after syllable we come to particle. Particle means, you know what in Bengali it is said as khudrati khudra gustu, means the existence of which is there but which is not openly accessible to our eyes. We cannot see. So if I say that this room is full of dust particles, those who know the scientific truth behind it, they will agree with me. But those who do not know, they will say, sir, the room is quite okay, it is quite clean. So how can you say this is full of dust particles? So particle means something which is there but which we cannot see with our open eyes. In English language also, there are certain words which are extremely insignificant, still they are used. That is why they are called particle. Say for example, if I tell you, stand up please, what will you do? Definitely you will stand up. And if I ask you, stand please, what will you do? You will do the same thing. So look here, in this sentence, stand up please and stand please, they have the same meaning. Then what is this up for? The use of the up has got no importance. Stand up please and stand please, if they clear the same meaning, if they indicate the same meaning, then what is the significance of the use of the word up? It has got no meaning, apparently no meaning. That is why it is called particle. But if you watch carefully, you will see that there is a slight difference between these two. When I say stand up please, we are putting more emphasis than when you say stand please. So this up has got to some extent some meaning to add to the verb, and because it is used with the verb, it modifies the verb to some extent. That is why these are called adverbial particles. Similarly, we can say sit down please, sit please, write your name please, write out your name please. These are the prepositions which are often used with the verbs, apparently having no meaning. But if you watch carefully, if you analyze the real meaning of the sentence, you will see that they have got some significance. These are called particles, and these are called adverbial particles. Now one thing, when you learn about the phrasal verbs, then the significance of particle was discussed. Now if you add a preposition to a verb, and if still the meaning of the verb does not undergo any change, we cannot call it a phrasal verb. But after using the preposition, if the meaning of the verb undergoes a total change, then only we call it a phrasal verb, because all phrasal verbs are idiomatic in their application. Say for example, I gave you the example stand please, stand up please. They have got no difference, virtually no difference. But if I give the example stand by, stand by is altogether different in meaning from what stand expresses. Stand and stand up almost same. That's why stand up is not a phrasal verb. But when you say stand by means to support someone. Okay, it is our duty to stand by our neighbors in time of necessity. So see, this stand by is to support. So actually stand by and stand, they are entirely different in meaning from each other. That's why stand by is a phrasal verb with some idiomatic expression, idiomatic meaning. That is why all phrasal verbs are idioms. Okay. After particle, next comes what? What I have already discussed. What? It is a meaningful unit of a sentence made of regular vowels or semi-vowels with or without the help of regular consonants. Okay. Then next step is compound word. Compound word. Sometimes you will see two or more words are put together to make a new word. Okay, like in your Bengali Dvandva Samas. So in English also you have got samas. It is called as compound. A compound can be a noun plus noun. It can be an adjective plus noun, a verb plus noun. Various kind of compounds are there. But compounds are basically made in three different ways. One is attached compound, then hyphenated compound, then detached compound. Attached compound means when two words are put together and they cannot be separated from each other, we write it as a single word. These are called attached compound. Take the example like tea plus pot. How do you write the word teapot? T-E-A-P-O-T in the same as a same word, as a single word. It is called attached compound. Similarly, you have got ink pot, then railway, headmaster, newspaper. These are the examples of attached compound. Then we go to hyphenated compound, means two nouns put together with the help of a hyphen, as if there is a kind of linking rope between these two. This hyphen is extremely important. If you do not put the hyphen, the meaning will undergo a total change. Okay. Say for example, if I give you running shoes, what does it mean, running shoes? Shoes which are used for running, But if I give you the example of running train means train which is running. That means in case of running shoes, the first running is noun. It's a gerundial noun. It's a gerund. Run plus ing, running, functioning like a noun. Now when it is also called as verbal noun, when you add ing to the basic form of the verb, to the present form of the verb, it can perform threefold functions. Sometimes it remains as the verb itself, sometimes it becomes an adjective, sometimes it becomes a noun. When it is verb, normally it is used in the continuous tense. He is running on the road. Okay, he is running is the verb here, continuous, present continuous. Then running is a good exercise. This running is a gerund because it is a noun. And I saw him running on the road. This running is qualifying him, the pronoun, and it is doing the function of an adjective. So we call it a participle, present participle. There is another kind of participle which is known as past participle also. Past participle, you know, in the conjugation form of the verb, there are three different columns: present, past, past participle. So all the words in the third column are called past participles. They also function as the adjectives past participle. That means they denote to the noun, they qualify the noun about some incident which has already happened. Okay, so hyphenated compound. Try to understand the difference between running train and running shoes. When we use the term running train, the train is running. When the train is standing in the platform, we cannot call it a running train. But in case of running shoes, when the shoes are in the shopkeeper's showcase, then also you can say running shoes. When you are running with the shoes, wearing the shoes, then also running shoes. That means in case of running shoes, running is a noun, it denotes a state, একটা অবস্থাকে বোঝায়. On the other hand, running train, running, it denotes a kind of quality, a present quality, an event, an action. That is why it is called adjective, participial adjective. So could you get the difference? In case of running shoes, you have to put the hyphen. Similarly, take other examples like swimming ducks and swimming costume, swimming pool. Swimming ducks means ducks that are swimming. Here swimming is participle. But in case of swimming costume, costume which is meant for swimming, in that case swimming is noun. So you have to put a hyphen here. Okay. And this is an example of hyphenated compound. That is what in short you should know. Then we go to the third form of compound, which is actually the detached compound. Some words are there which are used side by side, which normally are used side by side in a sentence, but they have no virtual link between them. These are, but together they clear the same meaning. Okay, together they clear one different meaning. That is called detached compound. Like say lunch box. These are two different words. There is no link between these two. That is called detached compound. Like school children, like pool car, like ceiling fan, table fan. These are detached compounds. So there are three different kind of compounds: attached compound, hyphenated compound, detached compound. Okay. After compound we come to phrase. What is a phrase? Phrase is another extended form. Phrase is a group of words and a part of a sentence without a finite verb. You must have a clear idea about the verbs, what is finite verb and what is non-finite verb. Finite verb means what in Bengali is called as samapika kriya. And you know, this finite verb sometimes can be one verb itself, sometimes can be two or more verbs together making a single verb. Say, I read the Ramayana every day. Read. Here read is the finite verb. Now I am reading the Ramayana now. Am reading is the finite verb. In this case, am is the auxiliary verb, reading is the principal verb. Am reading together make the finite verb. I have been reading the Ramayana for the last half an hour. Have been reading. This have been reading together. Have been auxiliary and reading is principal. Have been reading together is finite. Okay. So try to understand the difference between finite verb and non-finite verb. Finite verb are those verbs which can complete the function performed by a subject. But non-finite verbs, which are known as asamapika kriya, actually they add to some extent to the finite verb, the sense of the finite verb. They cannot stand on their own. They cannot make sentences on their own. Say, for example, if I tell you, I saw him. Which one is the finite verb? Saw. If I say, I saw him running on the road. This running is participle. It is not a finite verb. It is non-finite verb. To meet his uncle. To meet, this is infinitive. This is also not a finite verb. This is non-finite verb. For giving him the good news. Giving is another verb, but this is non-finite verb again, and this is gerund. So if the whole sentence is like this, I saw him running on the road to meet his uncle to give for giving the good news. In this sentence you clearly see that I saw is the finite verb, running is the non-finite participle, to meet is the non-finite infinitive, giving is non-finite gerund. আবার এর আগে যদি একটু অ্যাড করে দাও, seated on the balcony I saw him running on the road to meet his uncle for giving him the good news. This seated, it is also another verb. Is it a finite verb or non-finite verb? Again, this is a non-finite verb. This is past participle. Okay. So try to understand the difference between present finite verb and non-finite verb. So what I say in case of defining a phrase is a group of words and a part of a sentence without any finite verb. There can be non-finite verb. There is no problem about the use of non-finite verb. Then we come to clause, what we are actually discussing now. These are all introductions behind the clause. Before we come to the clause, the idea of clause, we should have a clear idea about this. What I said, alphabet, then syllable, then particle, then word, then compound word. Now I come to clause. Phrase and then clause. Again, so alphabet, then syllable, then particle, then word, then compound word, then phrase, then we come to clause. After clause is the sentence. Okay. Sometimes we know in some grammar books you will see that the division is alphabet, word and sentence. But these are the other things which are in between. Now clause. Clause in Bengali what is called as Bakangsho. Bakangsho. If you analyze this term, you will see that Bakker Angsho. Similarly, you can say part of a sentence. Now, actually, clause is the another extended form of phrase. If you add a finite verb to a phrase, it becomes a clause. So we can define a clause structurally and functionally both. A clause is a group of words and a part of a sentence with a finite verb in it. Now when you say with a finite verb in it, there is a natural analysis. It's a corollary that it has a subject and a predicate. In some books, don't get confused, in some books it is said that a clause is a group of words and a part of a sentence with a subject and a predicate. But if I say that a clause is a group of words and a part of a sentence with a finite verb in it, actually both are same. In what way both are same? Because you know, a sentence can be always broadly divided into two categories, two groups, two divisions, two sections, subject and predicate. And we know the finite verb is the most important part of predicate. So when you say subject and predicate, when it has got subject and predicate, means it has got a finite verb. It has to get a finite verb. There must be a finite verb. So a clause is a group of words with a subject or a predicate, or you can also say it is a group of words and a part of a sentence with a finite verb in it. Clear? And only one finite verb. With a finite verb and only one finite verb. So can we deduce from here that as many finite verbs are there, as many clauses will be there? As many clauses will be there, isn't it? So যতগুলো finite verb থাকবে ততগুলো clause থাকবে, and you must have a very clear idea about it. As many finite verbs will be there, as many clauses will be there. Okay, say for example, take the example, Riya is a good girl. Riya is a good girl. This is a clause, you can say. This is a principal clause. It is a sentence. Here the clause, principal clause and the sentence are identical. Okay. No, before that let me tell you something about the divisions. Now sometimes you will see that there is a clause, the clause which itself can make an independent sentence. But there are certain clauses which they themselves cannot make an independent sentence. Now the clause that is independent in its function and nature, we call it an independent clause, or you can also call it a main clause, or you can also call it a principal clause. So principal clause is that part of a sentence with a finite verb in it which itself can stand as a sentence. But some clauses are there which they themselves cannot make a sentence. They depend on the principal clause to add some meaning to it. Like the railway engine and its bogies. The engine is independent, it can move on its own, but the bogies cannot move. The bogies are to be pulled by the engine. So subordinate clauses are like the bogies of the engine of the train. Now take the example. Ria is a good girl. Ria is a good girl is the principal clause. Whom everybody loves. Whom everybody loves. Look here, whom everybody loves. This is also another part of a sentence. And loves is the finite verb in it. So this one is another clause. Because she is truthful. Because she is truthful. Yet another part, another clause with the finite verb in it. Isn't it? So the whole sentence is Ria is a good girl whom everybody loves because she is truthful. We have got three finite verbs here. Ria is a good girl is a finite verb. Whom everybody loves, this is another clause because loves is the finite verb here. Because she is truthful is another finite verb, and because she is truthful, this is another clause. So we have got three clauses here. And if you watch more carefully, you will see that the principal clause does not need any conjunction to be added to others. The Ria is a good girl. There is no conjunction at the beginning of it. But in every subordinate clause, you will see that it begins with a subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunction. Because it has to be linked, the railway buggies are linked or connected with the engine with a kind of coupling. This coupling we call as subordinating conjunction. Okay. Coupling is a mechanical device. So here also we can call it, these subordinating conjunctions are like couplings. Okay. The first one, because Ria is a good girl, Ria is a good girl whom everybody loves. Whom everybody loves. This whom is a subordinating conjunction. Because she is truthful. Because she is truthful. Because is another subordinating conjunction. So whom everybody loves and because she is truthful. These two are subordinate clauses. Now, if you add something more at the beginning of the sentence, we know that Ria is a good girl. Extend the form sentence in a little bit. We know that Ria is a good girl whom everybody loves or admires, whom everybody loves because she is truthful. Now, interestingly, we will see that we know, this becomes a principal clause. We know becomes a principal clause. That Ria is a good girl. That Ria is a good girl. Now it becomes a subordinate clause because that is the subordinating conjunction. In this sentence, in this new sentence, we know becomes the principal clause. That Ria is a good girl is the subordinate clause. Whom everybody loves is another subordinate clause. Because she is truthful, this is another subordinate clause. And interestingly, we will see that all these subordinate clauses will begin with a subordinating conjunction. Now, what are the subordinating conjunctions? Conjunctions which are used for connecting two words or phrases or clauses or sentences are grossly divided into two categories. Hopefully, you know that. Coordinating conjunction and subordinating conjunctions. Coordinate means the conjunctions which connect two similar things, two similarly important things, two identical things of similar significance, we call it coordinating. Like two engines, if there are two railway engines, they are of equal importance, they are all of equal function, equal stature, equal mechanical makeup. So these are called, if they are joined together with one coupling, that coupling has to be very important and very strong obviously, and that is called coordinating coupling, rather we would say here coordinating conjunction. Coordinating conjunctions these coordinating conjunctions, they will not be a part of any other clause. Keep it in mind. Keep it very much in mind that a coordinating conjunction cannot be a part of a clause. But a subordinating conjunction is always a part of the clause that it is associated with. So, coordinating conjunctions are, you may write down if you want, and, or, but, so, therefore, for, else, otherwise, on the contrary, then correlatives like either or, neither nor, not only but also. These are the coordinating conjunctions. Now subordinating conjunctions are all the relative pronouns like who, which, when, what, where. You know, is a relative pronoun. These sometimes they can be used as the beginning of a sentence to raise questions. That's why they are called interrogative pronouns. Who, which, when, what, where, how. These are used as interrogative pronouns as well as relative pronouns. When they frame questions, we call them interrogative pronouns. When they relate to another noun, we call them relative pronouns. So when they are used as relative pronouns, these are all subordinating conjunctions like who, which, when, where, what, how. And then if, because, since, as, lest, unless, until. These are all subordinating conjunctions. So identifying a subordinating clause becomes easier when we see that it begins with a subordinating conjunction. In a sentence there must be one principal clause at the least. You can understand that, because one finite verb has to be there. Without finite verb you cannot make a sentence. There can be more than one principal clause or clauses, and similarly more than one subordinate clause or clauses, isn't it? Now in the same sentence, Riya is a good girl. If you watch carefully, you will see that Riya is a good girl whom everybody admires. Whom everybody admires or loves, whatever it is, whom everybody loves. This is qualifying the noun girl. And you know, the part of speech which qualifies a noun means add some additional information to that. We call it an adjective. So whom everybody loves is the adjective clause, because it is doing the function of an adjective. Because she is truthful, this is modifying the verb loves, and the part of speech that modifies the verb is adverb. So it is an adverb clause. এবার যদি ওই এক্সটেন্ডেড ফর্মটাকে ইউজ করি, we know that Riya is a good girl, we know is the principal clause, that Riya is a good girl. This is functioning as the object to the verb know. So it becomes a word which functions as the object to the verb, we call it a noun. So that Riya is a good girl, it becomes a noun clause. So the entire sentence can be analyzed in this way, that we know that Riya is a good girl whom everybody loves because she is truthful. We know is the principal clause. That Riya is a good girl is the noun clause used as object to the verb know. Who is truthful? Whom everybody loves. This becomes an adjective clause qualifying the noun girl. Because she is truthful, adverb clause modifying the finite verb loves. Isn't it? Actually, if I do the board work, you will not be able to see. That is a problem. And write it down in your copies, you will get it. Okay. So let me repeat it again. Riya is a good girl. We all know that Riya is a good girl whom everybody loves because she is truthful. So we all know is the principal clause. That Riya is a good girl is the noun clause, object to the verb know. Whom everybody loves is the adjective clause qualifying the noun girl. Because she is truthful is the adverb clause, because it is modifying the verb loves. Now clause is divided into two divisions. I told you earlier, principal clause and subordinate clause. Principal clause has no division, but if there be more than one principal clause or clauses in a sentence, the first one is called as principal clause. The first principal clause is called the principal clause, and the other principal clauses are called coordinate clauses. Okay. Say for example, if I take the same example in a different way. Riya is a good girl and everybody loves her. Riya is a good girl and everybody loves her. Riya is a good girl, one principal clause, and is the coordinating conjunction. It is not a part of any clause. Everybody loves her is another clause. So Riya is a good girl is one principal clause. Everybody loves her is another principal clause. Ria is a good girl because it is the first principal clause, we call it a principal clause. Everybody loves her, this is coordinate clause. And is the coordinator. But subordinate clause has got three divisions. According to their functions, they are divided into three categories: noun clause, adjective clause, adverb clause. Noun clause, adjective clause, adverb clause. Noun clause has to do the function like a noun, the name itself suggests. Noun clause, it has to do the function of a noun, and noun has got 6 functions, I will discuss later. Adjective clause, it qualifies a noun or a pronoun, and that noun or pronoun is called its antecedent, antecedent. And adverb clause, it modifies a verb or adjective or another adverb. Okay, so in this sentence, we all know that Ria is a good girl. That Ria is a good girl is the noun clause. Whom everybody loves is the adjective clause. Because she is truthful is the adverb clause. That means you get all the clauses in the same sentence. You can make various sentences like this. This is a kind of game you can play on your own. Take a very small sentence first, and then if you go on adding to it, then you will see that other clauses are there. So take another very small simple sentence like we eat rice. We eat rice. Now look here, we is a pronoun, rice is a noun. If you can qualify we with a group of words with a finite verb, then that will be an adjective clause. We who live in West Bengal. Who live in West Bengal? Who live in West Bengal, it is qualifying we, so it becomes an adjective clause. Or we eat rice which grows plentifully in West Bengal. Which grows plentifully in West Bengal, this is qualifying rice, so it becomes another adjective clause. Or if you say we eat rice because it is very nutritious. Because it is very nutritious, it is modifying the verb eat, so it becomes an adverb clause, isn't it? Again, you see at the beginning, it is true that we who live in West Bengal, it is eat rice because it is nutritious. Then you will get all the clauses here. It is true is the principal clause. We eat rice is the principal clause. It is true that we eat rice. That we eat rice, this becomes in the new sentence as the noun clause. Which is nutritious is the adjective clause. So you can add on your own in this way. Okay. So in the next class we will discuss about the functions and structures of noun clause, adjective clause and adverb clause. Okay, we will go in detail about the discussions of noun clause, adjective clause, adverb clauses. Okay, hopefully in one class you will be able to do it. So you should have a very basic idea about what a clause is. A principal clause is an independent clause, but a subordinate clause is a dependent clause. It depends on the principal clause. A subordinate clause is named as subordinate because it is not independent, it is subordinate to the principal clause. Subordinate means less important. You see, in our home, father is the most important person and all other are subordinate to him, like this. Almost similar type of idea. So subordinate clause is of 3 types: noun clause, adjective clause, adverb clause. Okay, that is all about clause, and we will discuss in the next class about these clauses. These are the basic ideas about clauses, and please have a clear idea about the coordinating conjunctions and the subordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions are independent, they are not used with any clause, but subordinating conjunctions, they always are used at the beginning of a subordinate clause. Okay. Now, after the clause, after you have mastered our clause, after we have got a very clear idea about the divisions of clauses, then we will go to the transformation of sentences, simple, complex, compound. Because according to the clause structure of a sentence, it is divided, it is defined whether it is a simple sentence or complex sentence or compound sentence. Okay. Thank you. Stay safe, stay at home. All of you enjoy your studies, enjoy your classes. God bless you. Thank you, my children.